I feel prepared for it. And it's because you have a foundation which is based in trust, honesty, transparency, and authenticity. And those values guided me in my own practice, and they guide me today.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Otis Odell. Otis is a national leader in multifamily housing development with over 30 years of experience shaping communities across the country. As a business leader at HED, he drives national strategy portfolio development, overseeing projects from luxury high-rises to affordable housing. His expertise goes beyond construction. He navigates complex development markets, pioneers innovative designs, and is a strong advocate for modular, sustainable, and affordable housing. Otis serves as a board member on the Council on Open Building and is a frequent speaker at real estate and development events, including BizNow. His projects have been featured in Love That Design and the Architect's newspaper, reinforcing his reputation as both an expert and a visionary in the field. HED is one of the top 200 design firms in the U.S., delivering integrated architecture and engineering solutions across housing, healthcare, education, and much, much more. With all that said, Otis, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, we're excited. It was fun meeting you and learning not only your story at HED, but also running your own firm prior to that. So tell us a little bit about your origin story, how you got into architecture, and then how you started your firm and then HED as well.
All right. Well, that may take the whole podcast, so we'll jump in and see where it goes.
There we go. Let's not start at 6 years old. Let's go a little bit further down the line.
Well, I will say that in 10th grade, I knew it was going to be architecture. So I never looked back, and I was really determined to get there and got licensed in my early 20s, actually mid-20s, I guess. So I was working for a well-established large firm in Denver on a partner track, and I said, no, I got to give this a try. So I quit a secure job and went to my basement and started Odell Architects. And that was April 24th, 1995. I remember that day well. I did have a 16-year run, and at my largest, I was about 17 people. After 16 years, it was between after 2008, 2010, when things just went to heck with multifamily, which is where most of my focus has always been and was at the time. I was down to 7 or 8 people, and I sold that firm to one of my senior project managers. She rebranded and took over. She's still in business with 7 people, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 people. I moved off to California. That's where I connected with HED, and I quickly became an associate principal and then a principal. And then as HED made a move from more of a location-based or market-based firm to a sector-based firm, I assumed the role of leading the housing and mixed-use practice across the country for HED. We have multiple locations, 9 offices, about 450 architects and engineers.
Okay. So one thing that comes to mind prior to HED, so you're at your firm, 95, starting up here. Obviously, people are coming on board over those next 16 years. When did you start realizing that you were doing less architecture? Like at a certain point, you hit oh, I have to just be the business component of this, not necessarily the design component. Not that you completely give it all up, but when did you start realizing like these skills of architecture I'm using those a lot less than I was when I was just designing stuff by myself?
Well, that's a great question. It didn't take long, actually. You knew that you had to address the business side of everything. I did have a business plan when I started. And when I started, it was just me. Within a year, I had office space and employees. And as soon as you get employees, you think differently because you're feeding other families and other, paying other mortgages essentially. So within a really relatively short amount of time, certainly less than 5 years, 3 to 5 years, there was a realization that I had to stop every month for a couple of days and make sure invoices got out. I had to sell business. I had to be out and about and build relationships so that business would continue to come in. Of course, we had to do very good work and be very knowledgeable. So watching out for all of that. And you're right, I still had a hand in the architecture side of it and worked to support my teams, worked to support the project managers, got involved with all the internal team meetings and helped guide the project, and found the balance between working on the business side of things and working on specific projects.
So you got people, right? And as the business grows, there's a point where those skills even have to grow. You have to start being a manager as a transition. So talk about what translates from when you were a business owner to
A lot translates. Because my official title today at HED is National Business Leader for the housing and mixed use sector. So I am paying attention to project performance, the financial performance of the work, just like I had to do and learned to do in my own company. And you'd learn to do it in your own company, maybe out of fear, because you hear everybody's, talking in your ear. Otis, did you know that 90% of all businesses fail in the first 5 years? And you're like, that won't be me. And luckily, I did make it for 16 years. So much of what I had to pay attention to as a business owner is very similar at a different scale to what I have to pay attention to today. So I am watching project performance. And of course, it's not all me. I've got some really great team members who I supervise. One of them is an operations leader. And then we have other sector leaders that are around the country who are all focused on the housing and mixed use center sector. So I don't want to take all the credit. I do have to do a lot of strategy around business development. And instead of focusing on a single market, I'm focusing on the country. I love the national platform. And I will say that the work I did in building business and strategizing and building relationships in my own firm is applicable to what I'm doing today. It's at a different level. Of course, it's a different time and we connect differently. And when you're national, you are connecting in whatever way you can, including virtually. I will say that I'm a believer in face-to-face communication and face-to-face contact. Here's an example. I have a very strong client, good client relationship, and part of our business strategy this year was to reach out to existing clients or past clients where we had done successful work. Now, I did that in my own business as well. So we executed on that strategy last week. I went to Georgia, and one of our clients gave me a half a day with their entire development team. This is a very big national client, and I knew what I wanted to get out of that meeting, and I left there with exactly what I wanted to get out of it, which is additional opportunities. And the question they asked me is, how many can you handle per year? That's exactly what you want to hear at a meeting like that. So, back to the question that you asked, so much of what I experienced and really had to work with in my own business is very relevant to my role as business leader. And I'm talking about marketing, business development, project oversight. I do still serve as principal in charge on specific projects, which keeps me in the architecture world, which I love. That was something that I, of course, brought from my previous experience. I could not separate myself from projects because when you're a small company, it's 16 people, you are the business. You are the company. And clients, as much as you say to them, here's the team, here's the project manager, here's the project architect, they want to talk to you. They want to talk to me, right? So that's not always the case in today's world where we have, dozens of clients actually and multiple opportunities. Not everybody has to talk to me or feels like they have to talk to me. However, what's similar again is when there's a problem, then they want to talk to you. And that's, under the title of sort of project management support is what I've always called it, where whether it's my own business so many years ago or in today's world, if there's a challenge, and it could be, in today's world, it could be another principal in the firm. It could be another sector leader who is just not comfortable in tough situations with a client, and I'm brought in. And I don't mind it. I feel prepared for it. And it's because you have a foundation which is based in trust, honesty, transparency, and authenticity. And those values guided me in my own practice, and they guide me today.
How important are those values as you're looking at others on your team, right? So, we certainly believe core values are crucially important to finding the right people, right? Like you need to have the right people, and then obviously if they can do the right things, then they're in the right seat. But what does that look like? How does the team get built, and how much does core values come into play?
Core values are really critical, and they're really important as you recruit. People want to be a part of something really good. So, and I will say that adding people to our team, recruiting, interviewing, it can be very challenging to get the feel for somebody in a 1-hour interview. And you really do want to find ways to get a demonstration that there's honesty, there's trust, there's sincerity, and authenticity. I think it's really important. And we want to learn about people because one of our core values at HED is be you with us. We want you to be who you are and be a part of our team, contribute, we'll contribute back, and it's the synergy that you want. There's nothing better, and this has been something I've believed for my entire career. If you can align someone with the work they want to do and the work they really are passionate about, then it's a win-win. They're more likely to do a really solid job for you because they're doing what they want to do. So I think that notion of being you with us is really important. We also stress performance. We do want high-performing people. We like to collaborate. We like complexity in the work because we are critical thinkers. So we start to talk about that as we build the team. And we also recognize how important it is to maintain the team we have. And retention of team members becomes really important. And that's, again, where the core values come to play, because as long as a person feels like they're contributing and they have a very transparent working relationship that's, again, based in honesty and high quality output, high performance output, man, you want to hang on to those people.
How do you measure performance?
Well, we're pretty connected with our teams regularly. Where I'm principal in charge, Every project pretty much has a weekly internal team meeting, and assignments are given or discussed. It is a two-way street always. Where are you on this task? How have you progressed? And we keep track of our performance along the way. So everybody's putting their time in. Everybody's getting closer to the finish line. We measure it regularly. We do work plans, and then we monitor those work plans, and we put together tools and systems that allow us to measure our performance. We look at our multipliers at least twice per month. We have our goals set, and there's rigor to us really looking at overall project performance and then really drilling down to make sure that individual performance is following through. So just being supportive along the way. It's not where we're out there to punish somebody if they're not performing or if we see a weakness. We're empathetic. We're reaching out and saying, is everything okay? Did you have too much work this week? You didn't get some of this stuff done. Is something else going on that we need to talk about or talk through? How can we support you? It's that kind of interaction that builds strong teams and lets you really have a view into the inner workings of a team. Strong teams build strong projects. That's just how it is. And we really put a lot of emphasis into the strength of our team. So we've been able to build the team over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. It has gotten better and better and better. Again, people want to be part of something great. So when we talk about the quality of the work, the quality of the work, the quality of the work, it's so important for our team members to hear that because they want to do great things. They don't want to be a part of something that's half baked. They want to be a part of something that's awesome.
No, that's we think about people all the time. Obviously, one of the pillars of scale, as we say, people, process, technology, and how people are such a difference maker. And especially, as you said, the last 4 years, you just keep incrementally getting better and better with your people. You're inherently going to produce better stuff, right? Or better projects. One thing you said is, you have, your roadmap or your plan for the year or, your strategy that you're going for. How does that work? You're one practice within a larger organization. So like, how does that structure work of like, hey, like the company wants to go here, X, wherever that is, like, then do you build it off that? Or do you come together and say like, we think we can produce this much this year and then throw it in the pile for the big company side? So what does that look like in strategy and planning for your practice?
So it's a little bit of both. The firm always works and I shouldn't say against, with a strategic plan. Mm-hmm. A new strategic plan was rolled out last year. It drives pretty much all that we're doing. And then we, as a sector, do our own business planning at the end of every year. So we have a sector-based business plan that really ties back to the strategic plan and the strategic plan goals. We take the business plan that we've developed. Of course, it's reviewed at the corporate level, and I'm right next to the CEO, the co-CEOs of the company, so direct report there. So I'm very much connected with them, and we have biweekly meetings to just check in and see how things are going. And then we have biweekly meetings with the leaders of the sector. So the sector leaders from across the country and the business and development leaders all meet every other week, and the business plan is essentially our agenda. How are we doing against what we said we were going to do? How can we get better? What's in the way? What roadblocks do we need to remove so that we can have a really strong chance of meeting the goals that we've set? And again, those are tied back to the strategic plan that guides the movement of the company forward.
So, We talked about this a little bit in the pre-interview, which is where you're at didn't start that long ago. And you also said something which I found very interesting, which was that you'd made a transition from sort of being geography-based to being sector-based. Very interesting transition. Why? Why do that?
That came out of some consulting as we were putting our strategic plan together. The company was putting its strategic plan together, I think, at the beginning of developing the current strategic plan. It's only been a little over 2 years where we were focused on our locations, and that was sort of the unit of the structure that we worked within. We stayed kind of local or certainly regional to that office location, focused on the work at that location, etc. And then what you find is that people in Detroit versus people in Los Angeles versus people in Dallas versus people in San Francisco, they aren't necessarily doing things the same way. So when you're a company and 450, I mean, we compete with companies that are 1,200, 3,000, and 5,000. When you get that big, you need consistency in how you come across and the processes that you use. So what makes the most sense, I guess I would add, our goal is really to be a national company and to connect with and work with national clients. So if we're working with client A who's in California and we learn that that same client's doing business in Denver or in Chicago, we want to understand that and be able to respond to that. So what we do now in a sector-based structure, and as we've done a little bit of a brand refresh just in the last few months, we now have taken all of our locations off of the letterhead. So we used to be focused still on when we do a proposal and it was being done sort of out of the Los Angeles office, we'd pull the Los Angeles letterhead. It would have all the places that we are office, and then it would be highlighting the office location. We took that off of the letterhead, and now underneath the brand is all the services that we offer instead, right? So what we do now, and I think it really makes so much sense and works really well, we put together the best team. And that could be a person from Sacramento and a person from Detroit and a person from Boston and a person from somewhere else. And we align the strength of that team with the assignment. And it doesn't have to be all team members from one location. And it strengthens our offering. It strengthens the services because we are, in a way, customizing the team and aligning it with the specific task where maybe it's a renovation and we've got these people who do renovations and we put that best team together. Maybe it's a project that has, an internal parking structure and housing wrapped around it. We can pick the team that's got that experience and put that together. Of course, you want to have boots on the ground somewhere near the project location so you can service it when it gets under construction. So we take that into account as well. It just works really well, and it reinforces this idea that we have systems, we have processes, and we all are in the same boat, and we use them the same so that now I got somebody in Detroit working with somebody in Dallas, and they're like, yeah, this is how we do it. That makes all kinds of sense. And by the way, we're always open. If we hear somebody saying, hey, we think there's a better way, of course we want to listen to that. So that's really why we did it. And I will say that you asked or you mentioned that it hadn't been that long, and it's true. So we all went through the COVID thing together. We all pivoted to a virtual environment really quickly, and we were set up. We have really strong technology people, which is a blessing. And as we were given the demand to stay home, we were able to connect and continue our meetings and continue our projects in a very short amount of time. Within a week or two, we were just rocking and rolling. So as we emerge from the COVID era, it really prepared us for this kind of structure where we can connect with people very easily, no matter where they are. And as I mentioned before, I still like to go and see. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Los Angeles, where I was in that office for so many years, and I'm reconnecting and connecting with clients there face to face. And so we were able to do that very quickly, and it's worked. And for the most part, all of our team has really embraced this structure.
You mentioned how face-to-face interaction important for relationships. When you have more of a sector and not necessarily location team, right? How do you make sure that you're keeping that, that feeling of face-to-face if somebody's in Detroit and Boston and LA and Denver and somewhere else where it's like you are working together, you are collaborating, and obviously you work virtually through COVID, as you mentioned. But how do you really, really instill that relationship in the team?
I do think it's important to travel, and I do. As the sector leader, I go to our other offices. I connect with people one-on-one, make sure they're aware when we have a special event like a business plan or some other document. Many times I will travel around and present it in person. Mm-hmm. And take questions and get everybody on board with what the document is saying and try to keep that culture as best I can. And then we do have something in our sector, and most of the sectors have something like this, but we call ourselves Housers, and we have a monthly Housers Forum where, anything goes pretty much. Any kind of topic. It can be a project that somebody's working on. It can be somebody else's project that we saw that we really like and we want to talk about it. It can be, I'm experiencing this in the construction phase of this project and I want to share it with you so you can watch out for it next time when you get there. So that's still a virtual experience, but it's an important one that helps maintain culture and connectivity.
And you're doing this remotely, right? So you're connecting remotely. You're not, okay. Yeah.
Monthly, we have a Housers Forum, and it's a virtual connection. We're connecting remotely at that point. So we mix face-to-face interaction with virtual interaction. As I mentioned, I'm going to Los Angeles tomorrow. I will be connecting with team members that I haven't seen in a while. In addition to connecting with clients, I'll be run ragged because people will want to, go have coffee. And I want to do that. I want to be able to connect individually with team members. And of course, you have to realize, we have Housers in a lot of locations. We're probably focused more with our housing sector in Los Angeles and Chicago. So going to those locations frequently will help maintain continuity and connectedness and cultural vibe that I think is important. It's not to say we don't have Housers in other locations. We do. And we work hard to try and make sure that we're connected, certainly virtually, but also face to face whenever.
Well, next time you're in Chicago, you'll have to go face to face with Will as he is in Chicago.
I will do that, Will. I think I told
Awesome.
you my daughter's in Chicago too, and one of our CEOs is in Chicago. One of our CEOs is in Los Angeles. So I do enjoy going to Chicago. And by the way, Chicago is a very active market.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, there's
Right
always
now.
development going here.
Yeah. And, as tough as housing has been in the last couple of years, there is significant activity in the Chicago and Detroit markets and the Dallas market. Those are two areas that we're really focused on. Detroit and three, I would say. We call it the 3Ds in our business planning, and that's Denver, Detroit, and Dallas. Mm-hmm. See big opportunities there as we try to come out of what's been a challenging couple of years for housing sales.
For sure. So you're in Denver now, but you weren't before because there wasn't a Denver office. So how did that happen? How did you just say, hey, I'm going to twist some arms and I'm going to get back to Denver because that's where I want to be? Or how did this work?
There's a little bit of that going on. I was in LA, and there's a lot of great things about Los Angeles, and I really enjoyed working there and building a team there and met great people. And so we went through COVID, and after COVID, or even, toward the tail end of COVID, but during COVID, many of our team members were moving and going to satellite locations and connecting remotely and all of that. And circumstances, my wife and I decided it was time for us to go back to Denver. So I got the blessing of my partners, the partners in the firm. And there was an underlying interest in Denver, given that we have, a big presence in California. We have a strong presence in Chicago, Detroit. There was a gap in the middle of the country. And there was a lot of interest in Denver. So it was 4 years ago, actually, that I moved back, tail end of COVID, and I reconnected with some people. And there was a firm that two of my close colleagues had started about 25 years ago. So when I left the security of a big firm and opened up my own office, April 1995, about a year later, two of my close friends and colleagues also left and started their own firm. And I reconnected with them, and they weren't quite sure about their succession planning. They had a small group of people. They were around 12 to 15 people usually over that 25-year period. And we talked and talked and talked and met a few times. And then I made the introduction to them and our, at the time, CEO, who is now ex-CEO that stays very active in acquisitions and mergers for the firm. He's done an outstanding job of that. He's presented across the country on best practices for acquiring firms and merging with firms, and he's been brilliant at that. And I made the introduction, and most of the time, this takes a couple of years. You really want to dig in, make sure it's the right culture, make sure it's the right fit, make sure they're practicing, make sure everybody understands what they're in for, so to speak, in the change. And it took a lot less time here because of the relationship that I had with these two folks that I knew so well from my previous work. So I think we got through it in about a year. And June 1st, 24, merged and became HED, and that was the start of the HED office. And interestingly enough, these guys are not in housing. They are in a K-12 practice, which is one of the sectors where we practice, and have a very good reputation, yet didn't really get big work that they wanted to do because they stayed kind of small. What we did before we finalized the merger was we teamed up on a project together, a K-12 project, and went in as a team and won that project. And so now the Denver client base is understanding, and they are so used. This is happening a lot in today's world, the merger and acquisition piece. And as they started to talk to their clients about the fact that there was a merger pending, their clients responded essentially, "Oh, well, we've been waiting for that because everybody else has done it already. What took you so long?" Sort of a thing. So it was a pretty smooth transition. Not to say that there aren't challenges in doing that, but it has worked out pretty well. And now, they're able to do more robust work, and I am working to grow Denver and the housing side. And a lot of our sectors, by the way, are very interested. This is our newest office now. There's still always stuff in the works, but right now this is our newest location, and there's a lot of activity that is relevant to our other sectors. So we think there's going to be some momentum. Denver is kind of a hub for aerospace, and we have a science and advanced manufacturing. And so I'm trying to help facilitate meetings and business development people that we've got that are working in multiple sectors. So we're growing Denver. We are already up to 16 or so from 12 and expect it to keep going. And I will say that it's interesting. I stepped away for 12 years and I came back. And at first, when I came back, I was still really buried in other locations. So I was traveling quite a bit to service clients and stay connected with projects that were in other locations. And as I worked to reconnect to Denver, it's amazing how different the landscape is after 12 years. Different development teams, different contractors. And of course, we went through COVID, so that shook things up a little bit. Mm-hmm. It just was a very different landscape and has taken longer than I thought it was going to actually to reconnect. And part of it's because I'm traveling and trying to build Detroit and trying to build Dallas, and let's just throw Denver in there because we have an office there now. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and we have rigorous goals, and we're determined to go after it and build those markets.
Can I ask, how much, in terms of business development, how much have things changed, right? The whole remote app perspective versus in person. When you look at pre-COVID versus now, how much has business development changed for you, if at all?
It's different. You really need to be able to effectively sell this idea that you can service a project by putting the best team together, and that best team may not all be in the same location. I think that's a difference. And again, this has to do with how we evolved from, again, a location-based practice to a sector-based practice. I think that has changed the approach and the strategy to marketing and business development. What's nice about it is that it has broadened our client base. It has broadened our targets, and we can now take a more unified approach to going after those targets. So again, we're meeting regularly every 2 weeks, as I said, and we will have clients that are doing work in Dallas, that are doing work in Southern California, that are doing work in Chicago. And we share the stories so that when we go out to develop business with that client, we are able to talk about the fact that we did work with you in Los Angeles and reach out to this individual, and they will tell you about us and tell you about working with us. That's part of our national strategy, as you know, or as I've said. So that's different, where I think we pursued clients that worked nationally before. However, we were working in a focused effort on a particular location. And I think it strengthens our stories when we can talk about the fact that we're connected with this person in Dallas, and the team in Southern California says, "Oh yeah, I know him, and I'd talk with him, from time to time, and I get it." And we can share a positive experience there. That word travels, and it helps our business development efforts. So there's a couple of examples of how it's different and how we approach it differently as we come out of the COVID era and work again in a more sector-based format.
Do you use, other than the partners and perhaps other architects, do you use BD representatives? Like, do you use people that are specific role is like, hey, just go develop some business?
Yeah, we have specific BD people. They are strategy and business development leaders, and they are in all of our markets, and they are assigned specific sectors. So in the Denver market, we hired a man who is connected to workplace, housing, and science. And that's where his focus is. So I get about a third of his time and work hard to get as much as I can. So he can help me develop business in this market. We have people in all locations. We have an outstanding, they're all great, actually. We have a really strong business developer in the Detroit market. We have a really strong business developer in the Dallas market, and they are shared among sectors, but that's all they do. And then the sector leader role in our company is really defined as a seller doer. So they are helping to sell, but they're also very much involved in projects. So the business developer, depending on their level of experience and their capabilities, their job is really to get people to the front door, bring people to the front door, and then the sector leader can close the deal. And we've got outstanding examples of that happening. Most recently probably is in our Southern California, where we have San Diego and Los Angeles. We have a business developer in San Diego who got sort of a lead from a civil engineer about a big project. They were already working with an architect, so it was kind of a long shot. She brings this company to the front door. A sector leader and a good project architect went to meet with them independently. They got very well prepared because of all the intelligence that the business developer was able to bring to the table. And they went there and sold that deal, and we won that work. And they were working with a different group, and they saw the value in working with our group instead. And it's just a great story. I love that story. I hold that story up to all of our business developers. Bring them to the front door, and then the sector leaders will help you close the deal. And I like them to stay involved. Some of them are very capable, some of them, meaning strategy and business development leaders, to get through the proposals and to, again, share the intelligence, because they're out there talking to these people, and they learn a lot about them as they're out there. And so they bring them back to the business, or I'm sorry, the sector leaders. And the sector leaders are really subject matter experts in what they do. So they can then get in front of them one way or the other, virtually or in person, and really close the deal. It's great.
That we've seen similarly being more sector focused than location focused. It's not that we throw location out the door here, but being focused on specific sectors helps, one, add value to those possible prospects. When you know what's happening, you have a good pulse on what's happening, and they need other things that you don't offer. You have probably a laundry list of things that you can offer them that are just not direct, hey, let's do your architecture. It could be like, oh, you need a specialty contractor that that's in that location that specifically does house or specifically does K through 12, right? So I can totally see the transition, the 2 years ago, transitioning into this, how that can be very powerful for you and your business development across the board.
Yeah, really true. Very effective. I'm so pleased with the structure. I feel that it's a great hedge. We've talked a little bit about this, where since we're in 9 sectors and housing's been weak the last year or two, as I've noted a couple of times, out.
If you're twisting your own knife, that's on you.
No, well, that's a good point, right? I'm not gonna go crawl in a hole and cry about it. I'm gonna go out there and try and get it.
That's right.
Take care of it, right? However, so a couple of our sectors have been really busy and very, very strong. And the beauty of that is that while we have had weaker sales in the short term, we've been able to have some of our team members join that other sector for a short amount of time to support them instead of having to lay people off. And that's really positive and really helps the attitude of our team to, not be preoccupied with, oh my gosh, I don't see a housing work. What's going to happen to me? As long as they're willing to jump into a higher education project or a data center project or a K-12 project, maybe for 6 months, maybe for 3 months, maybe for 1 month. We have that kind of flexibility, and it really helps with retention. And we're very deliberate about it. So if we say we're going to offer a team member up, first of all, we'll have a talk with that team member. Hey, this is what's happening. You cool? And they're like, yeah, I'm cool with that. And so we get that set up. And then with the other sector leaders, we're like, okay, this is a 2-month gig, right? I got to have this person back in 2 months because we're projecting these 3 or 4 opportunities, and at least one of those is going to come through, and I'm going to need this person back on my team. And we hold, everybody accountable to what we discuss and what we agree upon. So that works great.
So sharing people between business units, which is amazing idea. Core values, I think, is some of the piece of cohesion, especially if you've never met the person. Now you're flipping to a different business unit, even if it's for 1, 2, 3 months. How do you make sure there's obviously nuance and cohesion, right? You kind of even mentioned doing different things because it's just the different cities that you're coming from. Look, I'm from Chicago. 4-letter words is part of my vocabulary, but that might not be so much maybe from Dallas or some other part of the country. How do you help with that cohesion?
Wow, that's a good question. Part of that just has to be a person's attitude and how flexible are they. I think we can help prepare for a culture shock between Los Angeles and Dallas, for example. And and there is a lot of communication with other sector leaders that might be in different locations. And even frankly, if you're in the same sector and in a different location, you're dealing with nuanced differences and cultural norms that you have to adapt to. Now, is that good for a person? Does that strengthen a person's overall character or overall abilities? Probably in some cases, maybe not so much in others. So we'll want to check in. Hey, how's it going in that sector? Or how's it going working with the Dallas team? Or how's it going? And addressing it all the way. We have a culture of collaboration, which is really important. So we don't, 10 years I've been working at HED, and I just don't see a lot of black cape, ego-driven personalities. People, and they're probably out there. I mean, I don't know every last person. I just think we have a culture of collaboration and empathy. So when we have come from different backgrounds, different cultural norms, again, I'll say, we can accept. We may not agree, but we can accept and work within that ecosystem. Okay. And, it's not perfect. Sometimes there'll be a bump in the road, or there'll be something that happens, and we're quick to address it and talk it through and see if it doesn't work, we got to make a change, then okay. Or if we can make it work, that's even better. Sorry, I cut you off, Will.
No, it's okay. Why doesn't it work? In the instances why it doesn't work.
I guess I would say that perhaps it is based on a lack of flexibility for a person or a team or a certain way of working together as a team. That's what I would say. Or, and so, some places like, let's say, housers for the most part are really passionate about the work they do. Our whole thing is positive impact. Our whole mission is around positive impact to people, clients, communities that we work in. I don't know what greater impact you could have than creating home for someone. And our affordable housing practice, some of the tenants that occupy our buildings, their previous home was the street. How could you have a more positive impact? And if you've got a team member who's all about that, providing homes for people or experiences for people, because hospitality is also part of our sector, experiences, placemaking, things that really impact people who use the spaces we occupy. And with all due respect, we have a very robust practice in mission critical doing data centers. And the same philosophies apply. if I take somebody out of the housing sector who is engaged in what I just talked about, changing people's lives that way, and then they're going to a data center project, they're still having that ability to impact, but it's much different. And some might say, they would call me and say, Otis, when can I come back into the housing sector? And again, every sector that we have and every project that we do is important, and we bring the same attitude and the same energy to it. We just have to deal with some of the nuances, as you identified, Will. I mean, it's just something that you have to put energy into and work with people on.
So it is a conscious effort then, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a conscious effort.
I'd love to talk more about this, but Justin, I think it's time for our last question.
Yes, absolutely. Otis, if you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give?
Myself?
Yeah, yourself. You go back 20 years, you get to give yourself advice. What would that be?
I reflect on my life and my career, and there's always things that you might do differently. I have to say, I am really blessed. I am happy. I have had tragedy in my life. I've had huge successes, and that is what life is about. I would say, what advice would I give myself? Don't ever stop growing. Don't ever stop looking at different ways, at better ways. Explore constantly. I feel kind of like I do that. I just feel that that's the best advice I could offer to myself.
Oh, it's powerful, for sure. The continuous improvement and curiosity push us a long way as a society, just as in general as in human beings. So I love that.
You can't stop. You can't stop growing. You can't stop wanting to make a difference. Don't stop innovating. And when you get to be at my stage in your career, there's one thing you always are saying: keep the old man out. Keep the old man out. Got no place for the old man. We have to get up and move and exercise and give it all we got every day.
Awesome. This has been a ton of fun. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
HED.design. Go to HED.design. You'll find all of our team members. You could look up business leaders. You'll find me, my email, my phone number. Call me, reach out. I'd love to talk to you about anything: architecture and design and housing.
Yes, as a houser. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say our goodbyes?
I hope that you found some benefit in listening to this talk and that you are committed to doing high quality housing work and helping the communities where you're working.
Well said. This has been a ton of fun, listeners. I hope you had a good time. I'm going to throw all the links and all that stuff in our show notes, so look there for that. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.